Before we get started, a big thank you to all of my supporters over on Patreon and on Twitch, with the Patreon people coming up on screen now. A big thank you to my legendary supporters, Mike, Kira, Truck Driving Gamer, and Obi-Wan Kanzi. Thank you guys, I really very much appreciate it. If you would like to help support me and the channel, then you can head over to twitch.tv/ManageRequest and drop a sub over there. Or you can go over to patreon.com/ManageRequest and become a Patreon member for some early access to some videos and some behind the scenes stuff. Hey everyone, and welcome to today's video on the Outpost phase in Frosthaven, going through step by step the 5 different steps in the Outpost phase, hopefully clearing up any questions that you might have regarding what to do in each step. I've noticed a few people on my channel ask questions about this step in the game, this new phase in the game. That makes a lot of sense, seeing as in Frosthaven this is brand new. Gloomhaven did not have this phase, and this is kind of the newest innovation, if you like, into Frosthaven. So let's go through it step by step. If you do find the information useful, please do toss the video a like and consider subscribing. I really appreciate it. It helps me grow the channel. We're getting really close to 10k subscribers now on the channel, which kind of blows my mind, but thank you all so much to everyone who has supported and subscribed or watches. It just means so much to me, and all of that good stuff helps get this video out to other people, so hopefully they might find it useful too. So very much appreciate it. I am actually joining you from my Frosthaven set, where I am actually currently playing through Frosthaven live over on Twitch. So come over to twitch.tv/ManageRequest if you'd like to follow along. I know a lot of people can't because they're trying to save themselves from spoilers, but people who do pop in and say hi, I do very much appreciate it. But I completely understand that a lot of people at this point in time are trying to save themselves or are playing through their own campaigns, so they can't really pop into people playing the game. But yeah, hopefully soon I will have enough experience to start making even more videos on this, but we've now resolved enough Outpost phases for me to be able to kind of do a proper guide on it. The first and obvious question is, what is the Outpost phase? Well, the Outpost phase is the element of the game that triggers when you return to Frosthaven from being out on your adventures. It's you regrouping your party all together, but it's also you helping rebuild the actual settlement of Frosthaven itself, building new buildings, upgrading, brewing potions, crafting items, and getting ready for your next adventure, while also helping out the general kind of population, the general community that you are growing here in Frosthaven. When do you do this? Well, you do this every time that you return back from a scenario, successfully or not. If you choose to return back to Frosthaven instead of maybe restarting scenario, if you failed, then you will have to resolve one of these. The only exceptions to this is that if you have a forced linked scenario, so some scenarios in Frosthaven, which is different to Gloomhaven, are forced linked, where you actually have to go out and perform them in order, so you don't get the opportunity to come back to the outpost and resolve this phase. There are some optionally linked ones where you can choose to not do this as well, which some people may want to do, because there are some times when you may actually not want to go back to progress time. It might be better for your party to stay out on the road a little bit longer. And of course, sometimes there may be some game effects that might come in and you might be told not to resolve it. But essentially, every time that you come back, successfully or not, you are going to be resolving this. So the Outpost phase is comprised of 5 different steps. You've got the passage of time, Outpost Event, then you've got building operations, then you have downtime, and then you have construction. It is very important that you follow this in the order that it is presented, and you do not deviate from this, because these steps can have an effect on each other. So step 1 is the passage of time, and it uses the brand new calendar that you get with your Frosthaven campaign on this new campaign sheet that you get. I'm using a blank sheet here so as to not give anything away from mine. There are some very minor spoilers on my personal campaign sheet in terms of what I've managed to achieve so far. You'll see that this calendar is split at the top here between summer and winter, and each season, if you like, has a 10 boxes in it to signify like how many weeks there are in that season, and you will rotate between these. So once you've gone from summer, you'll go into winter, and then you'll go back into summer, back into winter again, as you fill this up, as you kind of continue on with your campaign, and as you get really far down the road with everything that you have done. In the summer half of the calendar, you will be drawing from the summer deck. So you'll be drawing from the summer road event deck, and you'll be drawing from the summer outpost event deck, and similarly for the winter. Importantly, that you always draw from the next available box. So in this instance here, if this was crossed over and this was the next available box, I would be drawing from the winter decks. So this does mean that when you come back to Frosthaven and you do click this box off, you will be immediately into those winter. When you come back, you just cross off the next available box as you go along. So let's say, for example, we have done here. So the next time we will come back, we will be over here. If at any point you cross off a number on the calendar, either that's printed on there or perhaps has been added by yourself, the players, through different events and things that come up during your playthrough, then you will resolve that immediately. So go to the section book, look up what this number is, read it, and do whatever it says. It's important that you do that immediately as you go. Like I said, if at any point you manage to get yourself to this situation, when the next box that you cross off is here, that means that you are now into winter. The main differences here between summer and winter is that summer, the events that you will get are going to be a little bit more favorable to the players, not quite as bad, and attacks against your outpost of Frosthaven are going to be less frequent or maybe less dangerous. In winter, it's the time to batten down the hatches and to prepare for lots of attacks and maybe some not so great events that are going to come your way. So it's always a good idea during these summer weeks to try and stockpile some resources, make sure you build some walls and things like that, get your morale up and stuff like that to be able to withstand the winter or to make the winter not quite as bad. So make hay as the sun shines, as people say. So during summer, make sure that your party is stockpiling resources as necessary and don't try and spend everything all at once. Just give yourself that little buffer. As I mentioned many times during the game, you will be asked to add a number to a box on the calendar. It might say in 2 weeks time. So if we were here and it was to say to add something in 2 weeks, it would be 1, 2. So we would add the number in this box here. Once you have crossed out your passage of time, resolved any numbers that you may need to, then you just proceed straight to step 2. This can be a very quick step, as you can see, because sometimes you might not have anything in the box at all, and it is literally just a very quick passing of time. Step 2 is the Outpost event, where you will draw from either the Summer Outpost deck or the Winter Outpost deck, depending on what season that you are currently in. Returning players from Gloomhaven will recognize this to be very similar to the City event deck, except now we have 2 different decks rather than 1 deck. However, there are some different unique things in these decks, such as attacks, which is a brand new mechanic, as attacks could come to the outpost and could challenge you, and you will have to defend against these attacks. However, you draw the top card and resolve it. It's pretty much as simple as that in terms of non-attack cards. But what we'll do now is we'll go into those cards in particular, because they are really the ones that can cause a little bit of confusion and do need a little bit of clarification. So here we have an example of what an attack card looks like in Frosthaven, an attack event looks like when drawn. I'm using a drifter card here just to cover up the rest of the event, just so that that doesn't get spoiled. But every attack card will work essentially like a skill check in an RPG. If you've ever played those, you know you need to try and hit a number, and you're going to use different things to try and hit that number. So the number that we need to hit here is 10, so that is the attack value that is coming at us. It is targeting up to 4 buildings, and we have a targeting condition on the bottom here, which says that it's going to target odd numbered buildings from 1 to 40. In order to beat this, we're going to draw cards from the Town Guard deck, we're going to potentially add soldiers from the barracks that we have built, and we're going to potentially add our morale to that too to be able to beat this skill check. So the first thing that I like to do when I am resolving an attack is I like to get the buildings in the right order so I know which buildings are going to be attacked. And I found the easiest way to do this is to take your building deck and literally just go through it looking for the buildings that can be attacked and the order they're going to be in. So mining camp is a 5, that's our first one. So yep, that will be targeted because it's odd number building from 1 to 40. Hunting lodge, no. Logging camp, yes, that will be attacked, goes underneath the mining camp. Craftsman, no, that's even. Alchemist, yes, because it is odd. That goes underneath there for the ordering. And then the other 2 cards that we have, Workshop and Barracks, are both over 40, so we don't need to worry about those. The next thing to do is to grab your Town Guard attack modifier deck. Now this is in the same distribution as a normal attack modifier deck, except the numbers are bigger, and instead of your crit, you have a success, and instead of a miss, you have your wreck card here. So the distribution for this is the same. You get the plus 20, which is functionally a plus 2. You got the minus 10s, which are functionally the minus 1s. And of course, you got the plus 10s as well, and you'll have the minus 20 as well. And this is what you're going to draw in order to see if you're going to beat that check. You can upgrade this over time. You may have noticed that on your campaign sheet, you do have a little section called Town Guard perks. Ignore this to begin with. This will come up later on in the game. I haven't even got to it yet on my physical playthrough, but this is something that's going to come up later on that's going to potentially allow you to modify this and make it better like you do your own personal decks through perks. It is a good idea to try and calculate your base defense value, if you like, by counting your walls and counting your morale first. That way you know what your base number is, what your lowest kind of amount is. Of course, you could draw -10, -20, or of course that wreck. That does give you a nice idea of what your kind of baseline is, because it isn't always going to be 0, depending on your morale and of course any walls that you might have also constructed or any other effects you might have in play. So now that we've shuffled our Town Guard attack modifier deck, the last thing we need to do before we flip is to work out whether or not we want to use any of our soldiers. Now each soldier that we use will give us -5 to the value that we need to meet. So in this instance, one soldier would give us -5, 2 would make it 0. So unless we draw a minus, we'd be quids in to basically do it. Each soldier also gives us advantage. So if you use any number of soldiers, you will gain advantage. However, soldiers are quite hard to come by, so you might not want to use them all at once. And it's also important to say that each soldier that you use is only for that particular flip. And as you can see here, we're going to have to resolve 3 different attacks here, and we've only got 2 soldiers left. So it's not really going to work very well. We're going to have to decide which one we want to go for and which one we don't. Also, you can only retrain 1 soldier per building operations step. So it's not like you're going to be able to get lots and lots of soldiers back. So you might not want to be spending them. You might want to be saving them for a more important role a little bit later on down the line. But the important thing to remember here is that each soldier that you use gives you an additional 5 or takes 5 from the target number that you need to get, and you gain advantage. But you're going to have to do this each time. So in this instance, let's say, for example, that I do decide to use a soldier for this, which means that we're going to gain advantage, and we are now only need to hit 5 or greater. So we flip over here, +0, not great, +10, there we go. So with the +10, we do successfully beat it, so that means that we have successfully defended the mining camp. Now we go on to the logging camp. So for the logging camp, we need to do a similar thing. This time we're not going to spend a soldier. I'm feeling a little bit lucky. My morale hasn't come into this as well. So remember, if you do have a morale stat down here, this would also add to it. But let's go off of the basis here that I have a +0 to my morale, I think, for the purposes of this. So let's flip for the logging camp. +10, look at that. I'm very, very lucky today. So lucky I hit that 10. So the logging camp is also successfully defended. So that goes away. Now, last up, we have the Alchemist. Alchemist would be a bit of a pain to be able to lose if we did lose it. So maybe I might consider using it. However, again, I might be able to spend some resources to stop this from happening. So I'm just going to let this one roll again. So we'll just roll from the top, spending no soldiers. Oh, okay, so we hit the wreck card. So the wreck card is a automatic fail. It is the same as drawing basically the miss, if you like, from normal. So as soon as I draw a wreck card here, I must immediately flip over the Alchemist to the wrecked side. The wrecked side of the card will give you some bad things. For now, you don't really have to do too much more. It will just go back into the building deck in order that it usually would be for the building operations step. Importantly, if I had just failed that instead of wrecked, what I would need to do is immediately pay the repair costs here. So this would be any 2 resources or building resources here, the material resources that I could use, or I would have to lose a morale instead. So if you fail a check, all you need to do is basically try and repair immediately. If you have the resources, use them. If you don't or choose not to, you can lose morale instead. If you draw a wreck though, unfortunately, that's the worst thing that can happen to you at this stage, and this card will go back into your building operations deck, and yeah, we'll resolve that in a minute when we get to step 3, which is building operations. One final thing to note with attacks is that you do always get the resources or bonus or whatever it may be at the bottom of the attack card. Even if you failed miserably and you didn't manage to defend any of your buildings and Frosthaven is in ruin, you will still gain these bonuses at the bottom. So you can use that as a little bit of a tactical knowledge to know what you can afford maybe to use during the attack to fend off, but you will always get this bonus regardless of how well you do. So step 3 is building operations, as this is when we're going to go through all of our building cards, our constructed buildings, and resolve any daytime actions that they might have. So anything that's indicated by the sun is then going to trigger. And we're going to do this from lowest to highest, and it's important that you maintain this order. Please note that when you resolve your first outpost phase, you only have the following buildings. These are the buildings that are printed on the actual game board itself. All of the other buildings that are printed on the game board will have the costs associated with building them. So when you're resolving your very first outpost phase, these are the only buildings that should be in your deck. So first up we have the mining camp. This will allow us to collectively buy up to 1 metal for 2 gold. Now this metal can go to somebody's personal supply. It could go to the Frosthaven general supply, but collectively as a group we can only buy up to 1 metal. So decide between yourselves what it is that you would like to do. And we'll go through and resolve these all together. Hunting lodge allows us to buy hide, logging camp allows us to buy wood. Craftsman doesn't have an effect because it does something in the downtime, which is allows us to craft items. The alchemist, though, is actually flipped over to the wrecked side, which sometimes you will find that on this little sunlight section here, you will actually get a really bad effect, or you might get a cost that you will need to pay in order to keep it here. So there is a real risk here that you may end up having to pay a cost if a building is wrecked. Here it says that I cannot use potions, which is obviously a terrible effect to have if we ever go back out on the road. And also it's cancelled our nighttime event, which means that we're not going to be able to brew and distill potions, which is obviously quite bad for us as well. Workshop doesn't have anything on here. And then finally we get to the barracks, which allows us to collectively train up to 1 soldier for 3 gold and 1 material resource. So like I said earlier in the event phase, getting the soldiers can be quite difficult. So the fact that you can only get 1 soldier with the level 1 barracks means that your use of soldiers you might want to be careful with. But once we've done that, we have done every single one of those, then that is basically building operations over, and now we move to the downtime. So step 4 is downtime, which is very similar to what the original kind of Gloomhaven sequence was. This is where you're going to be able to level up if you've gathered enough XP through your adventuring in the previous scenario, where you'll be able to retire if you have done your personal quest. You will be able to sell items if you want. But the 2 new things that you can do is you can craft items and you can brew potions if you have an intact craftsman's hut and an intact alchemist, which through my examples today, you can see I don't have an intact alchemist, so I wouldn't be able to brew potions. But it's those 2 things that I would like to go through in more detail. So I will show you as much as I can without spoilers, but unfortunately my resources that I have for these, I have obviously started playing my campaign, so I can't show you my alchemy board, but we can go through generally what you do with those things. So first off, let's talk about crafting items. Crafting items is something that you can do if you use a resource from your personal supply and you pay the resource cost that is indicated on the item. Sometimes you'll have more than 1 resource. Sometimes you'll have a situation like this where you may need a previous item in order to be able to do it. So to get the reinforced shield, you need to have the crude shield and some wood, which makes sense because you're reinforcing it with wood. Nice and simple, but the resources for this must come from the player's personal supply. Once material resources have been put into the Frosthaven supply, they can no longer be used for crafting items. Similar to Gloomhaven, you are not able to craft items and give them to other players, but you can sell them. When you sell an item back to the shop, if it is a crafted item, you gain 2 gold per resource or item that is on this. So this would be 2. This would actually get you 4 instead of 2 because it's got 2 things listed. If you are selling back a gold item that you may have got from the items when you first started your campaign, then it's still half the amount of gold rounded down like it always has been. Brewing potions is a little bit different and it does kind of have a slight exception to the rule of using your personal supply. So brewing potions, you're going to take 2 different herbs, you're going to mix them together and you're going to gain a result by using your alchemy chart and tracing down where the 2 meet on the chart and then revealing the window like a little advent calendar to see what it is that you get. You're then going to take 2 copies of that potion. You're going to add 1 of those copies to your available craftable supply just in case somebody wants to mix that potion up themselves again later, and you're going to take that other copy and you, the brewer, could either use it yourself or you could give it to another player. I found personally playing solo that this was a little bit confusing, or it didn't really matter, but essentially when you're brewing potions, you're allowed to use herbs from your own personal supply and from the Frosthaven supply. So it makes sense to me for most players to put all of their herb resources into the general Frosthaven supply so you can keep track of what everybody has. When you brew a potion, you can decide who gets that potion as well. So unless you have somebody who is maybe very particular and they don't want people to veto them getting a potion, I don't see why it's particularly relevant who brews the potion. However, I guess as a tiebreaker, it is the person who brewed the potion who does actually get to decide who gets it. So perhaps they might hold on to it for themselves. But as a solo player, I have not really seen that to be a problem. And what I have been doing is I've been tossing all of my herb resources into the Frosthaven general supply. So I've got one central place so that I can see what I have. And it also means that you can quickly mix different herbs together without really having to worry about whether or not you're going to get that nice variety of herbs. If everybody is holding on to their herbs and not putting them in, then it might be that somebody has one herb and you have a different herb and you don't get to get those combinations. So to me, it makes sense to be nice and open with this part of the game and chuck all of your herbs in the middle and just go crazy with all these different combinations and finding out what it is that you can get. Once you get your alchemist up to level 2 and level 3, you will unlock more functionality. First off being that you can distill potions, which means that you can put a potion back into the supply, but take one of the ingredients back from that potion. So this allows you to very, very quickly unlock massive amounts of different potions using some of the rarer resources that you can get in the game. The rarest herb resources is Axenut, Corpse Cap, I believe it's called, and Flame Fruit, I think it is. So these three along here, they are the rarest. So once you get those, it's a really good idea to get level 2 alchemist, start distilling so you can really find out what all of the potions to do with the common ones that one kind of makes, if you like. And of course, once you get even higher, you'll be able to brew 3 herb concoctions as well for those super potions. In Downtime, players can do things in any order that they choose. So unlike some of the other Outpost phases that are very regimented, Downtime is very free-flowing. And if you want to retire, you get to do anything you want before you choose to retire. Leveling up, do anything that you want before you choose to level up. So it's more of the free and easy part where you are wandering around town, getting to do what you want to do for your character. Very similar to what the Gloomhaven phase was, if you like, when you returned back to Gloomhaven. But once everybody is ready, they are finished and they are ready to go back out on a brand new adventure, that's when you would move to step 5. So step 5 is construction, last but not least, and a very important part of your progression with Frosthaven. Here you can build or upgrade up to 1 building, and you may pay 2 morale, lose 2 morale to gain 1 additional build or upgrade. You're also going to have the option additionally to be able to rebuild any of your wrecked buildings, and you can do rebuilding as much as you like, but you can only do 1 build or upgrade, or potentially 2 if you do give up that morale, but it is a maximum of 2 that you could ever possibly do, and you're probably not going to be too keen on giving up that morale every single time. So in order to build, you will need to pay the building costs, which is associated on the level 0 sticker that you may have, or also on the board itself. So as you start the game, you will have several of the buildings shown on your map board with the building costs on them. I can't show you my board because, well, I have lots of things on my board right now, and it's probably not a great idea for me to show you my game board at the moment because there is some spoiler stuff on there, but printed on the board itself will be the cost in order to build those buildings, those initial ones, such as the mining camp, for example, is listed on there. If you choose to build it, you pay the requisite resources, and then you find the sticker in order to be able to put it on your game board. Line it up, stick it down, and there you go. You got yourself a mining camp. The next thing to do is to go through the building deck, the unused building deck that you've got in your Frosthaven box, and pick out the mining camp card with the corresponding level and put that into your new deck. That now goes into your building deck, so you can use it next time you come back and do a outpost phase. Also importantly, make sure to resolve anything that is in this exclamation mark here, because this is a immediate bonus that you get. So when we build the mining camp, we would immediately get +1 prosperity. Now upgrading, I can show you a little bit better. Upgrading works in much the same way, except for the fact that we will be paying this cost here with this little upgrade arrow. So this would require that we have prosperity level 3. We would pay 6 lumber, 3 metal, and 2 hide. Once we do that, we would replace the level 1 mining camp card with the level 2 mining camp card in our deck. So this would go away, and we would now add the level 2. Again, making sure that we immediately gain whatever is down here, making sure that we add anything that we need to, read a section if we need to, and that will be then added to us for, again, the next outpost phase that we do. Remember to fish out the sticker as well. There are stickers for each level of the buildings as they progressively get more built up. It's very cool to see as Frosthaven kind of generally improves, and you will do that. Now on to rebuilding. Rebuilding is the one that you can do as much as you like, and as you might remember, our alchemists unfortunately did get wrecked. Now wrecked is down here on the bottom left. So as you can see, there is the wrecked cost here. Until I pay this cost, I am going to be stuck with this incredibly bad effect here, which is characters cannot use potions. Not really something I think I would advise most people playing with. I mean, for an extra challenge maybe, but certainly not something that I would like to play with all the time. So we would need to pay this cost here, so a wood, a metal, and a hide, and then this would flip back over to its unwrecked side, go back into our deck, so next time we will be able to use it. But of course, the real downside here of having a wrecked building is because of that, during that last outpost phase, we were unable to brew and distill potions, which, yeah, is a bit of a bummer. So maybe not the worst thing in the world, but a bit of a bummer. But certainly this means that we really, really need to pay for this wrecked cost and flip it back over. This is a very real downside that's going to hurt us quite a bit. You may notice that both the barracks and the workshop do not have an upgrade cost. Don't worry about this. This is because these particular buildings are going to be involved later on in the campaign, so don't worry about that. There is no way for you to upgrade the barracks without just playing more of the game. So do not worry about the lack of that, and you will discover that when you discover it. When building, you may also consider building wall sections that will give you permanent bonuses to your defense. Please note that these do not have cards that go into your building deck and just give you that permanent effect. You can see the costs for these around the outskirts of Frosthaven in the sections in which the stickers need to be placed. But once placed, you don't need to do this again. There's no card associated to it, but it does count towards your build and upgrade action limit. The only other thing that is a little bit odd in the construction phase is the workshop, which actually allows you to upgrade boat, sled, and climbing gear. These are considered to be upgrades, so count towards your upgrade limit. So 1, unless of course you were to pay the 2 morale to get 2, and this is where you would put the boat, sled, or climbing gear stickers onto your board, and that will then give you access to certain scenarios that will require either one of these items for you to be able to reach. Thematically, it's like if you come across a scenario that's on the water, you might need a boat to be able to get there. So these are going to be necessary to do, but it's important to clarify here that this only happens during the construction phase, and these do count towards that limit. Okay, and that's it. That is the final step. You're now onwards onto your journey back out on the road, choosing a scenario and going to resolve it. It's important to know that you don't get to do another outpost phase again until you attempt a scenario and either choose that you failed it and you come back, or potentially you complete it and you win and you come back. Remember maybe to use those link scenarios to potentially stay out a little bit longer to stop that progression of the calendar, which can sometimes be a good thing. You don't always want to be going into winter straight away, so delaying that a little bit can be quite good. Gives you an opportunity to gather resources and go back for one really, really big outpost phase where maybe you get to build a big building, craft a bunch of items, get to brew a load of new potions. That can be really, really rewarding to do so. And remember that if you do decide to restart a scenario, you also don't go back and do it too. So if you fail, you can always opt to just restart a scenario, lose the material resources that you gathered, but you do not have to go back and resolve that outpost phase. And that's it. I think it's a very fun part of the game. Hopefully this video helped you. If it did, please do toss it a like and maybe consider subscribing if you enjoyed the content. It does help me out so much and I do really, really appreciate it. I'm really enjoying the game and hopefully you are also enjoying it, and hopefully this video helped, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye.
I think so. Yeah.
Oh,
Scout
that's the blessing from Cam.
Yeah.
That's the blessing from.
Isaac, at this point, can we get your approval to add an additional attack modifier deck for allies in the digital version?